We're going to talk about what has happened in Ukraine on this day of the Russian invasion. We'll examine the actions and the strategies, both military and political. Now, if this is your first time watching, my name is Darren Gertis. I'm a professor who's built multiple leadership programs at Charleston Southern University. So we'll also view these events through the lens of leadership. And I also wrote a book about Zelensky called I Need Ammunition, Not a Ride, and you can find it on Amazon. Okay, it's day 101, and the fighting's still going on in Severodonetsk. Ukrainians have not only resisted a complete capture; it was looking very sketchy there, but they've actually pushed the Russians back, which is really surprising that they've gained the ground. The Russians lost at least 20% of the city, according to the regional governor, and yeah, and so it's a real struggle in Severodonetsk. He said this, the regional governor said, as soon as we get a big amount of Western long range weapons, we will push their artillery back. And now think about how this works. You get a Western weapon that can push 40 or 50 miles. If you can park that in Lusachance and you can shoot that all the way into major cities in that occupied territory that they could not touch before, you can double the effective range, and that's going to be a game changer for the Ukrainians. But it's a matter of time and learning how to use it. In other news, Russia's 35th Combat Arms Army was almost completely wiped out, according to one report, and that's by the confirmed by the Institute for the Study of War. And that might be true, but they also took ground around. No, this is up by Izium, and but they also took a lot of ground around Izium. So they continue to expand, and to the degree that they expand, they begin to continue to threaten, kind of narrowing in on the army that's in Severodonetsk. Zelensky gave three speeches today, and so the first one of them he gave um, to the Mayors Association in the United States. And now that seems like a really strange venue, but it's really not. He needs to stay top of mind. Now think about how the news cycle works. One item is crowded out by another. And in early March, late February, early March, it was all Ukraine, 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 Ukraine. It's been chased out by Johnny Depp and abortion and the border wall and all kinds of other things that were going on. So he spoke to the conference of mayors, and he talked about, you have sister cities in the United States, like Chicago is the sister city of Moscow. And what do they do for you? And, and he named a couple of them. Now, it turns out there are 68 sister cities in the sister city program between the United States and Russia. And a number of them have already symbolically ended their relationship in protest for what was going on in the war. He didn't know that. That's okay. But he talked about how there's going to be needs, and your cities can partner with us in reconstruction, and there's going to be need and opportunities, and we welcome you into that. And he said this kind of thing to the parliaments of European countries as well. And so he's inviting them into that process. He's thinking about rebuilding and thinking about what's the next step, and that's a good thing. Now, the Russians are already doing the same thing. They're also planning post-war reconstruction in a very different reality. So the mayor of Moscow visited Luhansk and announced that, quote, Moscow will provide humanitarian assistance and assistance in restoring the social and engineering infrastructure of two cities, Luhansk and Donetsk. He went on and said about 1,500 specialists from the various departments of the Moscow Municipal Economy Complex and 500 pieces of equipment are already in Luhansk. So they're already thinking about rebuilding, but in a different, when Russia wins, is what he's saying. TASS also reported that Secretary Dmitry Peskov said that certain results have been achieved since the beginning of the operation, and many settlements have been liberated from the pro-Nazi minded armed forces of Ukraine. He also went on to say, and people have been provided with the opportunity to start establishing a peaceful life. Well, of course, peaceful life means that the Ukrainians are defeated in his world, that the Ukrainians are defeated, and now, Russia can control this area, and it'll be peaceful as a independent country that's essentially a puppet government of Russia or another state or territory within Russia. Okay, at the same time, food prices have already risen higher. The UN has warned that African countries, which import more than half of their wheat consumption from Ukraine and Russia. So again, Ukraine and Russia, they provide about 30% of the world's wheat supply, and about half of what Africa imports comes from this region. So they're facing an unprecedented crisis. So Putin meets on today with Macky Sall, the president of Senegal, and Macky Sall. Now Putin knows what he's doing. He's playing this guy as a puppet. And Macky Sall comes out and he announces Russia is ready to ensure the export of its wheat and fertilizers, and I call on partners to lift all sanctions targeting wheat and fertilizer. Well, of course, Putin wants this to happen. He wants this guy to be calling and getting all the African governments to call for the lifting of sanctions, because that's going to help Putin be able to make his war machine work and make his economy thrive again. Putin was more than happy to sell the grain, Macky Sall continued. Putin was more than happy to sell the grain if sanctions were lifted. But of course, that's if sanctions are lifted. Zelensky, in his final speech of the day, said that Russia fired on All Saints Monastery. Like, why are you destroying a monastery? And he cataloged a number of churches and other holy sites that have been affected. He went on and said, I was interested in what Russian propagandists would say about the destructions of the skeet. But in fact, nothing interesting. They're very predictable. Ukrainians are accused of arson. Now, he concluded that the terrible consequence of this war can be stopped at any moment. It can be, quote, if the same person in Moscow just gives such an order. And of course, he's talking about Putin. Now, Putin's unlikely to give that order anytime soon until he's forced to. And at the same time, he's kind of gaining some momentum, some support in the world. Like French President Macron again told the press that, quote, we must not humiliate Russia so that the day when the fighting stops, we can build an exit ramp through diplomatic means. To which the Ukrainian Foreign Affairs Minister, Dmitry Kuleba, tweeted, calls to avoid humiliation of Russia can only humiliate France and every other country that would call for it. I mean, just think about what he's asking for them to do, to not do, like Russia is humiliating Ukraine daily with physical violence. Don't worry about hurting his feelings. Okay, that's all that we have for day 101. Thank you for your time and attention. Come back for day 102 tomorrow. Hey, if this video was helpful, hit like to help others find it in YouTube's algorithm. Subscribe so that you can stay informed. And one more thing, if you are moved to contribute to the humanitarian aid for Ukraine, I have a link below for Samaritan's Purse. If you want to give, be sure to give only to reputable organizations. There's a lot of scammers out there. Thanks for your time.